If you've been waiting for another classic console this year, you're in luck. If you've been hoping for another mini system this fall, you're in luck. But it's not from Nintendo. What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from Switchforce. Gabe is here, and Sony announced, I don't know if this is coincidence or not, Gabe, but they announced a few hours after the Nintendo Switch Online service launched that, hey, they'd be bringing a PlayStation Classic to market later this year. On December 3rd, for 100 big ones, you can buy a console preloaded with 20 classic PS1 games. It's the exact format and idea that Nintendo employed with the NES and the SNES. Heck, I wonder if the hand model is the same dude, but it gives you a console. It's 45% smaller. It comes with 2 controllers. It's got like kind of the fake buttons that do different things. It doesn't have an AC adapter. But it's interesting that they're going this route in a year that Nintendo is taking time away from promoting a classic piece of plastic.
Hey, this is perfect strategy. This isn't the first time that Sony has taken inspiration, let's say, from what Nintendo does, and it goes vice versa. Sometimes Nintendo's inspired by Sony, but PlayStation Move was inspired by the Wii Mode. They had PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, which was clearly inspired by Super Smash Bros. And, there's other times as well. But each company does, get inspired by the other one from time to time, and it's cool to see this crossover. I'm personally quite excited for this mini console, more excited than I was for the NES one. The NES one did nothing for me. SNES, I was all for. I love the SNES one.
SNES was really good.
I just don't have the nostalgia for the NES games as much, just because I was young.
Yeah,
so
which is fine, and I wonder, like, there's a lot of factors here that are interesting. It'll be fun to see, I guess, how they handle things differently. Like, I wonder if Sony is going to go the route of like, let's mass produce these and push them, as opposed to Nintendo's limited run sort of route and then re-releasing and bringing it back and kind of keeping it as this highly coveted item. I would kind of expect Sony to just say, hey, we want to sell as many of these as possible and get as many more PlayStation branded things out in people's houses. $100, $20 more than the SNES, $40 more than the NES. Obviously, it's a generational jump. I wonder what that means for the future of the eventual, right, like N64 Mini. Are they going to charge the same since it falls under the same generation? And will this kind of motivate Nintendo to get the gears going a little bit faster for their next, I would say, inevitable classic console?
Yeah, they're going to have something, right? Whether it be the Game Boy, whether it be the N64, we don't know what's next. I feel like at some point they hit all of these. So, yeah, that's going to be quite interesting. Zach, I wanted to ask you, though. We don't know all the 20 games that are going to be in this PlayStation collection. So give me one that hasn't been announced. And why don't you run through the list of the ones that have been announced first?
All right, so we've got Final Fantasy VII, which is the big one, Tekken 3, R4, Ridge Racer Type 4, Jumping Flash, Wild Arms, with 15 more to be announced. So giving you a limited slice, and I very much feel like the release of this on December 3rd is tied into PlayStation Experience, so maybe they save a big game like Metal Gear Solid or something like that for like that conference whenever it ends up being. It's a strong lineup thus far. They do have a lot to pick from. It's obviously a plethora of different franchises they could go to here, and I think that's one of the strengths that, one, these games are going to be pretty big, and two, they can pull from quite a few places. I feel like Nintendo leaned much more heavily on their properties, as they should have. Sony might jump around a bit more.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Do you include Crash, even though we have remastered versions?
Right.
Same with Spyro. Siphon Filter is a game that I would personally love to see on there. You mentioned Metal Gear. There is so much. Twisted Metal. PlayStation was my jam growing up. That was like my main console. I did have a Nintendo 64 as well, but most of the time I spent playing games was on PlayStation. So, yeah, this for me is very exciting, and I just think it's actually, like, kind of cool that they're, like, borrowing from Nintendo. And some people are saying, like, oh, they're ripping off Nintendo, and, I mean, that's how companies end up innovating, right? You see one competitor to do something cool, you go and you try to make it cooler with the same basic idea, and that's competition breeds more good stuff for us, honestly, because if it wasn't for the Nintendo doing it first, we wouldn't have this from PlayStation.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I don't think it's offensive in any way. I think it's definitely like, hey, we can do this too, and it obviously is inspired heavily from the packaging to the size to the idea. But it's not like a crazy concept, right? Bringing back your classic titles is something that companies across genres have done for years, and Sony has already done. They brought their classic games back to PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 in different capacities, just like Nintendo has the Virtual Console. Here, creating a small little itty bitty console does feel like, whoa, like this is Nintendo's joint, but I think it's, there isn't one from Nintendo, so it makes sense that Sony would use this as an opportunity to get in on that. They don't really have a big, traditional Q4 exclusive. Spider-Man will definitely fill that, and it's selling just as well as any AAA title, but it did release in early September, so this kind of gives you something new from Sony to put on the store shelves. I don't think it's offensive or egregious in any way. It is kind of cool. Does it provide any sort of insight to you in terms of what Nintendo does next? Maybe they do lean on the N64?
Well, I know exactly what's going to happen, Zach.
Yes, again with your exact knowledge.
Guys, and you guys are lucky that I bring this information to you. I can get in a lot of trouble. We had a Nintendo-inspired meeting this morning. I work at Nintendo. I don't work at Nintendo. But if I did, I would tell you about this meeting we had where we were inspired to make the N64, and we're not going to include an AC adapter this time.
That's weird to me. I mean, it's a small thing, but... Okay, so how do you feel about the $100 price point? Like, if the N64 comes out at $100, is that an issue? Or do you think a $20 jump per generation makes sense?
The games are bigger.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they hypothetically, like, account for more gameplay hours.
Mm-hmm.
And...
Which is all valid.
And, I mean... and this is like sounds anti-consumer, and I'm sorry, but like it's just good business. If you put on something to the market, right, and the market receives it really well, and you like made a limited run of it, eventually you come back and sell that for more because people want it so badly. Like I know that's not something people want to hear, but like that just people are gonna pay this. Sony knows by now that like, hey, there's a market for people that are really like nostalgic about these things, and we can charge a little bit more. And it's unfortunate. I wish it was a little cheaper, but Final Fantasy VII is going to provide you way, way, way more hours than anything on the NES or SNES. So I'll just look at it that way. You'll get value from the actual gameplay hours you're going to be getting.
There's definitely RPGs on the SNES that could match it. And, it is interesting that Final Fantasy VII just got announced for Switch. Mm-hmm. What's the cost of that? How does Square sort of price out those titles? Hey, you could throw another Final Fantasy into this PlayStation Classic pool, and that would make perfect sense. Basically, it boils down to $5 a game, which I don't think is aggressive or egregious in any way. You look at virtual console pricing, and this is for PlayStation games and what N64 games cost, $10 a pop over there. So that's, I think, fine. It does seem like a lot, like, $100 for something from long ago, but yeah, I would not be surprised if the N64 launches next year, the N64 Classic, and if they did do basically this exact package, 20 games, $100, 2 controllers, little console. I mean, it really just feels like this is going to be the way going forward. And will Sony come out with a PlayStation 2 Mini? Will Xbox come out with a giant, I don't think you can call anything original Xbox Mini. It just had to be like a mid-size Xbox or a little bit smaller Xbox, the smaller Xbox.
That's a great way to look at it, though. By the way, the $5 per game, that doesn't seem bad to me at all. Because, like, yeah, you look at the $100 price point, you're like, hey, like, these things didn't cost $100 before, and, like, they're costing more. Like, these companies are greedy. Like, I'm with you. Like, I get it. Like, I wish they didn't cost more. But if you look at it, $5 per game, plus you get the controllers and the console and no power adapter, you're going to have to find that on your own. But still, there's value there. So maybe it averages to a little bit less than $5 per game just because you also have the console itself and the controllers. So that's a good way to look at it.
A little bit under. I do wonder, like, I always think about this kind of stuff, behind the scenes workings. Like, is there any coincidence or intended action behind PlayStation talking about their classic games and their fall plan the night that Nintendo launches their classic games for the fall plan? Like, is that just serendipitous random luck, or did Sony consciously say, hey, September 18th? I mean, they launched this thing, or they announced this thing, again, like a few hours after when Nintendo Switch Online service was expected to debut. It's just strange.
You want to hear my theory?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not joking this time. Like, my theory is that, like, no, they didn't do it because of it. But once they saw that was a date, they're like, okay, yeah, then like this is definitely it. Like, I feel like there were like clearly plans in motion to get this, mini SNES thing going. I'm sure they were going to announce it within this time frame. But then when they saw like, hey, this is the exact time the NES Online thing is going to happen, I'm sure there was a meeting and they said like, hey, guys, we were looking for a time. How about a couple hours after this time over here? Like, I don't think it was like super malicious or anything, but
no.
Yeah, like I'm sure it had some impact.
Right. I'm also curious sales-wise. Like, obviously, the NES and the SNES Classics sold like crazy. Is there as much nostalgia for PlayStation? I feel like on a surface level, people would say yes, but a lot of these games, I mean, and I guess the same goes for the NES and the SNES, have been accessible on like Vita and things like that for years. So is there as much fervor? I'll be curious to see, like, do these sell millions of units, and is it as popular like once it's put on store shelves? And let us know, like, in the comments down below, if you are gonna have that crossover, even though you are a Switch owner and mainly a Nintendo fan. Does this tickle your nostalgia bone, or does it just seem like another classic console you want to add? Because now you can line them up. You don't. I mean, if you want to keep them separate to keep companies, from duking it out, you can. But you have the NES, you have the SNES, you have the PlayStation, eventually N64 probably. Kind of. I just like this like mini world that we're establishing.
Zach, I'm sure someone's already doing
Pretty
this,
nifty.
but at some point you can have like your entertainment system with like every console ever and every mini version of the exact same console ever right next to it.
Yeah, beautiful.
Like, that's
beautiful.
gonna be cool.
That's the setup we need.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious, like Big Brother and Little Brother. Let us know your take on the PlayStation Classic in the comments down below. How you feel about it? Are you interested in it? And do you think that means that Nintendo moves to the N64 next? And would you want that at a $100 price point? Let us know in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest from the Switch and whatever Nintendo decides to slide out next. We've got you covered. You can follow us on Twitter and Discord. Links in the description below. Until next time, though, for myself and Gabe, a fantastic day. We love you. Switch Force out.